Welcome to Read Between the Wines, where two bibliophiles discuss our love of the written word from cover to cover and cork to glass. Pour yourself a beverage and join us for this week's episode. Cheers!
Fill me up, buttercup. So we can get to talking.
We can talk about some books.
Fantasy we dislike. Thanks.
You're welcome.
Oh, you're welcome.
You're welcome.
It's like wine asthma.
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 ASMR.
I know what it means.
Asthma. Well, how do you say it?
ASMR.
You ain't. You say all the. Seems like such a waste of energy to say all the letters.
There's only 4 of them.
Asthma. ASMR.
I believe you're supposed to... That is not the asthma we wanted. See?
Hello.
Asthma's not it.
Hello. Guten Morgen.
Hello.
Bonsoir.
Good evening?
Hola.
Isn't bonsoir good evening?
Is it bonjour?
Bonjour is hello.
Oh.
Oui.
Bonsoir. Bonjour. Oui. Un petit Duolingo.
Not sponsored, by the way.
She drinks, she reads,
drinks.
and she knows things.
And she speaks a la lingua.
She speaks a Duolingo. No. Okay, we're going to start over. Hello. Welcome to this episode.
That is not it. Hello, we are here.
Today, we are discussing book asthma.
Oh! Hold on, the moon is moving.
More asthmaing.
Asthmaing.
Moon asthma. Okay. Let me...
Just take a sip of that. Take a sip and calm your tits.
Calm yo tits. And settle in for this week's episode. Fantasy. We hated. I don't know if I could say hated. Maybe slightly annoyed.
Slightly bothered. Left me wanting
Not
more.
hot and bothered, just slightly bothered.
No, just slightly like on a
This could have been.
like a, you could have gone through the yellow light, but you stopped in front of me. That kind of bothered.
Wow. That's a whole lot of bothered.
That's not a whole lot of bothered. If I left early enough, it shouldn't be bothered at all. I'm just annoyed. Like we could have both made it.
Life lessons with Meg and Abby.
If the light is yellow and it hasn't been yellow for very long, keep going. Or else.
This is not legal advice.
No, it's not. Nothing.
We
in this
cannot
podcast.
be held responsible for anything that comes out of this one's mouth.
We never said that we were.
But trust us on books. Nothing else.
Books are fine. I'm not a professional driver. I just do it for fun.
I have a damn good time doing it.
Right.
Same with reading.
I have a better time reading than I do driving. But I think for this one, I'm going to be less helpful.
Right.
But it's only because,
I will carry you this episode.
as you have all of the others, and I appreciate you.
That's what I'm here for.
But I think for fantasy that I disliked, it's less about a specific book. There are certain things about fantasy books I dislike. And I think that's where I come to this. Like, that's my perspective on this, is I have a lot of opinions of the things that I think are overdone or like just too blah to be called fantasy.
And I think for me, the general theme is I'm just swimming in the wrong end of the fantasy pool when I find things I don't like. It's not really about a book itself.
That's what I'm saying.
It's more of like, oh, I don't like the way this worked. But then I'm like, oh, well, I mean, you chose it when you picked this realm of fantasy. It'll make better sense later.
Just hang with us. We'll figure it out.
And now you have to keep listening.
Right now you have to figure it out because now we know you want to know because I know I want to know. I think my biggest pet peeve with fantasy is if it doesn't create the world well enough. Like if you just gave me 3 sentences about the setting, you have not created a world for me. You have not told me what I need to know to create the scene, to set the intention, to know the time period, or like, because I feel like for fantasy, there's such an emphasis on
An emphasis
on the syllables of location and time period.
Do you like fantasy that builds its own world? Or do you prefer maybe like, I don't know how, let's use the term loosely, but like real world? Like if it's like present day.
Oh God, no. So, and I think because it's fantasy for me, it needs to transport me somewhere else.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
So if you were like, hey, and I don't care if it's in the future, which just seems more sci-fi-y to me if it's future, but very much, I love, for me, a cozy fantasy is something that's set a little bit beforehand, right? We are chopping our own wood for necessity, not just because we're we're sustainability conscious. Like we are, we're traveling by train because not everybody has a car. We are like, you know what I mean? And you can have some modern conveniences within the realm of the story, but they're not what's making the world.
So I'm giggling because I read a lot of fantasy that kind of happen real world, like present day and time. Like it's not, it's like people are finding out they're witches,
right?
Or they're using magic in the real world. And earlier, as I was trying to find a page in a book, I like literally started to bend down and like whisper what I was looking for, because I've read so many where the book just like
opens
and goes to it. So I'm like, there's definitely like.
So I will put a caveat on what I said, because you brought up a really good point in that if it's present day, but it's not this world, I'm cool with it.
Yeah.
So like if it's present day, if we are, we're using all of the modern conveniences, but it's not this world, it's a completely different world, it's a completely different land, it's a completely different planet, like whatever it might be. Or you're talking about, for me, like we talked last episode about like the Fae cultures, basically. Yes, there are human things around there in these worlds, but they're like out in the boonies.
Yeah.
We're talking like Macedonia type shit, where you're focused on the Fae realms.
Yeah.
So to me, I like that. That's cool for me for modern day stuff. But if you were like, it's 2024 in New York City, I'd be like, the end.
Boring.
The end.
Moving on. But those are the books I like. I don't know why, but it just, I don't know. Maybe it gives it more of a real feeling.
I was going to say, do you like the possibility of
would love potential. The possibility of like, maybe our magic is just waiting to pop out, right. And maybe I could whisper into this book and it would turn to the exact page that I'm looking for. Like, how cool would that be?
And I love the ability for a book to like show or encourage whimsy.
Yeah.
For me to be like, hey, wouldn't it be so neat if, I just snapped my fingers and this thing was, here or happened, or that was the usual. That would be lovely.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
I mean, I'm still the girl who will like snap at the light when we're changing things. I'm like, and go,
right?
And green. Yep. Like, it's still me. And when it works, my kids think it's hilarious.
Yes.
And they're like, you did that. I'm like, you're darn right I did.
Yeah, I did.
When we both know I just saw it turn yellow and counted to 4, and then.
Yes. I planned it. I was watching the other lights.
Yeah, but it looked really cool to my kids.
But it worked. Whimsy.
Whimsy is a necessity.
Yes.
I think.
Yes. That's what I love.
Right. And it doesn't have to be, what is the word? Juvenile whimsy.
Yeah.
Right? There's a difference. If it's juvenile whimsy, I'm kind of like, I'm over it.
I have accidentally picked up a book like that. I usually read my books based on what the synopsis.
Yep.
And so I read, and I was like, oh, this is so cutesy. Like, this could be, and I read it, and I was like, I think this is like a kid's book.
Too cutesy.
Yeah, and I'm
it's too much cute.
I mean, I'm still going to count it because I read it, but.
Yeah. I need whimsy with substance.
Right.
I need something to hold on to a little bit, because I need, though it is fantasy, I need it to feel like it could be real.
Right.
And if it doesn't do that, it falls flat. It's flatasy for me.
Flatasy. Yes. And I think I would say a lot of the times, if I don't enjoy a book, it's not really because of the book. It's more because of me. I am not big into. I'm probably opposite of you. I don't know that I love a big made up world
Ah,
with
that's fair.
words that are hard to pronounce. So now I'm struggling to like call these characters by their names. I'm struggling to remember where they live and they're like like Game of Thrones. I had the worst time
I didn't read it.
because I was like, who?
Didn't read it. Didn't watch it. Didn't read it.
Who is this person? Wait, you're from where? Oh, your house of who? Like there was so much. And I think the world was too big. And I would say now I haven't read the books I watched the movies and it was still hard to keep up and I'm looking them dead in the face.
Right.
So I have not started. I do have that series.
Right. I've thought about it, but
I
it
haven't
seems very
started it.
overwhelming.
And that's exactly why. And I would think that that's why I don't enjoy some of the fantasy books is because I've just dove headfirst off the deep end.
Right.
And
you're
I'm
like, this is where I'm going.
oh, this is too much to think about.
So on the Game of Thrones piece, I did not watch it. I did not read it, but I did basically, because you know how social media does and
Spoilers.
they do the clips, right?
Uh-huh.
Where it's like, here's a clip of this and a clip of this. And you just keep clicking the button. You eventually get to like part of the storyline.
You watch all of it in.
But when I feel like TikTok wasn't a big thing when Game of Thrones first came out and things like that. I do remember, I'm pretty sure I watched Daenerys's entire storyline in YouTube clips. So I
YouTube shorts.
have I have a very good understanding of her perspective of the story, knowing full well that there are other houses and a lot of other crap that
So
happens,
many
right? There's so many things,
characters, yes.
but I watched her side and was like, I'm good. I'm content. It was too much for me.
It was.
Right?
And that's why I'm very afraid to read those books because it's
a commitment.
It's a thinking game too. Like you can't just
It's not the Game of Thrones, it's a game of thoughts.
right.
Thoughts with OUGHTS, not OTS.
No, thoughts. Short thoughts. I don't know where that came from. But yeah. I can't do I'm not there yet. I don't have the patience for full worlds and 12-syllable names.
See, I love something with it.
I just can't because it makes it. I'm struggling to get the words
Okay.
because
So,
me as a
here we go.
grade A.
Do you read every word when you read?
Yeah, sometimes.
Okay. So I read 96% of the words.
I try not to skim, but I do
Right.
skim.
I try not to skim unless it's something I've read like 6 times. I'm like, all right, we're talking about the freaking weather again. Like, I don't want to hear about the weather. Like, that's a skimmable thing that I will do. But I will read, like, I'll read the names the first, like, 15% of the book, right? I'm reading all of the names, and then when I
Yes.
get to that, I'm just filling in the name.
Yeah,
I'm not
that's
reading
what
the
I'm
name every
doing.
time again, right?
Yes.
So that's why the names don't bother me after a while, because I'm
Okay.
like, okay. And then when you get to something where, like, you get to book talk, and they're like, oh, this is how this person's names were pronounced, and I'm like, what?
Wait, that's not.
I'm like, that is not how my brain said it.
I've been calling him Frank this whole time.
Right? And really, his name is Franquet? Like, how did I get that wrong? But, like,
Right.
you know?
I
But
should
it's
have
that-
known better.
It's that sort of thing, but I also don't let that. I take it in the same way that people take, like, visualizing people, like, visualizing characters. We are not going to think the same way that somebody
No.
looks, right? And I am going to get it horribly wrong because that is not what makes it for me.
Right.
But if you hand me a map in the beginning of a book, I will, like, as we start, I will flip back to the map every once in a while and be like, okay, like,
Here's
until
where
I
we
get the
are.
idea of where it
Yeah.
is, I will actually utilize that map.
Yeah.
And so I like that because it puts it into a place where I feel like I can move about. I can move about the cabin.
I can move about the cabin.
Move about the cabin.
I think my intellect takes over and I'm struggling to read the words correctly, so I can't submerge myself. I'm just going to use it every time now.
Every episode.
It's just a thing now. But yeah, so my intellect takes over and I'm like, oh, I have to get this right. I have to read this word correctly.
Right.
And that
But who's going to know?
that fucks with my ability to see the world.
I get it. But also, who's going to know if you read it wrong?
I will. Oh my
How would
God.
you know if you read it wrong if you weren't, like, you don't know how it's
I
read
just
correctly?
assume that everything is wrong.
Okay, we're going to get you some confidence books. Let's go back to self-help.
Clearly I need more self-help. No, but I just know because then you see
I
them
understand.
online and you're like, and then you're
Oh.
doubting because you're like, oh no, that's not what I got. But you're like, maybe I'm wrong. Am I
And-
wrong?
I have, so this is the best way to do this. We've mentioned this a billion times. The ACOTAR series is a big thing. So people are saying the names online, right? And I remember, I think I saw one of the videos before I read the book. And they were like, well, how do you pronounce? And the video was, how do you pronounce these characters' names? And it was two people trying to pronounce the names. And they were saying them completely differently. And they were looking at each other like, what do you mean? Like, how did you get that? And then I read the book and I was like, oh, I see both.
Oh,
I see how you did that.
I can see.
And then I picked the one I like best. Quite frankly, I was like, you know what? That sounds cool.
You just put the emphasis on whichever syllable
whichever syllable I wanted. Right? And half the time they all get nicknames anyways. I will also say that from a personal standpoint, I am terrible at names.
Yeah.
I'm so bad. Movies, TV shows. Mike and I have watched TV shows so many times and I'm like, okay, but that guy, Tiny Dancer, what's his name? And he's like, what? And I'm like, that guy in the show, Tiny Dancer, the one who, and he's like, oh, Tim? And I'm like, sure. Tiny Dancer. And so I will change their names in the middle of the show. And when we discuss it, I will be using the names I made
because
up.
that's how your brain works.
Right? And he's just supposed to catch. I feel bad. I'm sorry. But like, he just has to keep up with me.
I get it. Yes.
Right?
And that's what happens with me in books. I'm like, okay, we're just.
Right. And it might be something that's like completely irrelevant. Like, I'll be like, yeah, so frowny face. And he's like, frowny face?
I'm like, is it not obvious?
I was like, he's always got his eyebrows like frowny face. What are you not seeing about this?
Yes.
And he's like, that's the Godfather. I'm like, whatever. Like,
whatever. Okay. Frowny Father, whatever.
Frowny Father, yeah. Right? And that's an even better name. And so that's what I will do. So
I think along that lines, I think we all envision characters differently based on the description that we get. Like, we all come up with, like, whatever our brain fills in. My pet peeve is when they create movies or TV shows out of a book,
right,
and then they reprint the book and the cover is like the actual actors.
I will not purchase that book ever.
And I'm just like, now I'm seeing this and you're what I see when I read the book and I don't like it.
And if I've seen you act in something else, I cannot put you in this place.
Yes.
That's for me.
Yes.
So when I see a book that's got like the actual characters from the TV show on it, I actually won't read the book at all. I won't pick up a different copy. I just will not read that book. And I don't know why it's such a thing for me, but I'm 100% on that boat with you because in fact, I probably wrote it a little harder because I'm just like, fine, I'm not reading it at all. Oh. Like if you decided that, and I think I just figured out what it was. If you think that your choice of actor is better than the author's choice of a cover, I feel like that's rude. Yeah. And I think that's why it bothers me because who gave you the ability, and I'm sure the author had to sign off on it, right? They're still making money from it, but give me the original. Give me the thing that they chose, that they picked, because this is part of their work.
Let me see.
Right?
Yeah.
Don't put some person who played 16 characters on there and I can't figure out who you are.
Right. I picked up in the book I'm picturing right now in my head is The Discovery of Witches.
Okay.
And I picked it up and didn't realize that it was a movie cover.
Okay.
Because it's like a very realistic portrait.
Right.
And what I'm realizing now is that it is the actors, because I have picked up books 2 and 3 and they match each other.
Oh no.
And they are cutesy.
Now we
and
have
they are
unmatched.
Whimsical and they are fabulous. No. And I have this with like actor portraits on the front.
Nope.
And I'm like, ugh. But when you shop used, you can't really be picky. And I
get what you get, you don't
know. I didn't know any better at the time. I figured it out later. So now I'll be on the lookout for like the first book that matches my second and third
and then you'll
book.
just pass the other one off.
Yes.
But yeah, I didn't know I had such strong feelings about that, but definitely.
Because not only does it have the portrait, but also imprinted on it, it's like new hit HBO show, new coming soon to Netflix. And it's not a pick-off sticker. It's like printed. And you're just like, oh.
Right?
I don't like this.
No. That's the thing. If I wanted to watch the movie or whatever, I'd get it on Netflix. And here's the thing. I don't save my Netflix. I watch it and then I say, okay, bye. And it goes away. Right? I don't want it on my shelf.
Right.
I don't have a graveyard of movies I've watched. I have a graveyard of books.
I have a graveyard of books.
And it's the happiest graveyard I have seen.
Shelves.
Right?
But now
I have trophy
need a
piles.
matching one.
Yes, you do.
I need a matching
because
one.
That's bothersome.
Because the other ones are super cute. Did this one not so much. But I got I've been on Threads a lot. And a lot of people recommended this series. Even though it is a hefty book.
Ooh.
I know we're talking about things we hate. Actually, I could probably include that. It is a hefty book. It has very tiny margins and very tiny print.
Oh no.
That's
an investment.
This is not a book I would typically pick up. I would not. Like, it's just... But so many people
Here's
have
looking at you,
raved,
Threads.
Right? Like, Threads, the girlies over there, yes. They're like, we love the books. We love the series. Definitely read the books first. Like, this whole thing. But they are loving. And I was like, I mean, I have the book. Maybe I'll just commit. And I did. I started it. And so far it's pretty good. And you're going to hate it because it's like real world Earth with witches and vampires.
See, that's the thing. I'm not in the vampire world yet. Right? Like, one of my favorite books on my shelf ever is Dracula. I have an old copy of Dracula that I absolutely adore, and I think I've talked about it before. It's falling apart. It just feels like it was his, like, right? And so, like, love that. But I'm not a big vampire book reader after Twilight.
Yeah.
Right? Like, I read Twilight. I did the vampire thing for a while, and I was like, that's enough of that. And really haven't gone back to vampire since. I think I mentioned in the last episode that I have the Sookie Stackhouse series. And the other thing that is a little bit of a pet peeve of mine is how much I love a good series. I like having the whole series in front of me to be able to read. But also, there's like 12 freaking books in that thing. I don't know how many there actually are. But there's so many. And so I look at it, and one, I now have to like take one out of the little boxy thing, which is going to make them all shift to the left a little bit. And that's a little upsetting. And then two, when I read it, it's going to make the book bigger. And then I have to put it back in the box.
But that's the beautiful thing about having a box set. Is the box will conform them back.
God, I hope so.
You'll be fine.
But the other thing is they're all sitting there, and now I'm overwhelmed. Because I'm like, I want to read this, but it's also like,
you're in for a long haul.
Right.
I was actually having this conversation on Threads as well.
But it's one of those that when I'm in on a long haul, like, there are times where I feel like, cool, I'm long haul ready. Like, let's do this. But at the same time, there's so many of them. I'm like, it's the Game of Thrones conundrum. Do I have the bandwidth to commit to these 12 books? Granted, they're not big books.
No.
I could do it. It's not like I've read.
And you will. I know you will.
I will. I just have to do it.
Yeah.
And it's not that I don't want to. It's just that I'm worried I will get into it and either, one, not be able to stop, which is the entire reason I don't watch long series on shows, because I'm a terrible binger. Like, I will do it. And it will be unhealthy for everyone involved. And two, what if I get in there and I read like 2 of them and then stop and then have to reread those 2 again? Who has time for that?
Yeah.
With all the unread books in my house, like I said, I have a bunch of gorgeous shelves in this home, and they are slowly all becoming full of books. And now we're like turning books sideways and stacking them because I'm like, you'll find a home here soon, or like, I'll read you soon. I have a bag of books. I'm like, oh, there's so many things. There's so many series. There's so many, especially now in the fantasy space. There's so many out there that I feel like I just need to consume them.
Yes.
And I'm feeling a little overwhelmed by the vast amount.
Yes. And I do feel like every fantasy book I pick up is a part of a larger series.
Now, yeah.
And it's the same thing. It's the commitment issues. I do not want to be tied into this world for 8 books. Like 8 thick books. Yeah. Made sure that came out the way it was meant to.
No, it made sense. No, I'm with you, but like at the same time, do I absolutely love certain authors and the way they write? Yes. Am I going to read all the books? Yes. It's going to take me a little while to get there.
Think about, I'm just going to play devil's advocate to my own damn self.
Oh, I was like, I'm not going to like this at all.
I'm like, I am just going to negate everything you and I both just said.
Dang it.
If you were to start on the Sookie Stackhouse series, do you realize how many books you would read? Like 12 or 15 or however many, like in the next month.
I would hit.
You would knock out your reading goal.
Right. So my reading goal this year is not a ton of books, right? You have a much higher reading goal than I do. And I
don't have kids.
This is true. And because of that, I think I read last year. I was like 1 book per month, 12 books in the year. And I was like, I can do that. And I did that. So this year I upped it by 6. If I were to read that, that would be almost my entire, I would almost double my.
Save it for January.
Don't. That feels like cheating. See, that feels like cheating.
I don't know why.
I don't know, because.
It's not like you were rushing to read them anyway.
No. Now what do I do?
Well,
you created a problem.
Oh, I woke up today. I'm the whole damn problem.
Oh. What?
What?
Now when do I read them?
Ooh.
Because they're good now because it's like spooky season.
Yeah.
Or do I knock out my whole... No, that does feel like cheating. I'll just read it.
Oh, God. So I just have to read them now. Damn it.
I have to finish this one, and then I have to read Chuck Palahniuk, and then I have to do that. So it might be January.
So...
But if it's January by natural happenstance, that will feel better.
Whatever works.
Don't give me or them that look. I can see you.
Whatever makes you feel better.
Nothing makes me feel better but books. Nothing helps.
Nothing is helping.
There's always more books.
Just keep growing. I don't know that we really talked about anything in the fantasy realm.
No, I think we talked
specific.
Well, we talked about
We
what
circled.
we didn't. We talked about stuff we didn't like about
circled a
fantasy
lot.
in general. There aren't a lot of fantasy books I hate.
I mean, this is like my genre right now. This is your genre right now. Is this the world's genre right now? Are we all just living?
It's not your husband's genre.
It's not. Oh.
Is it his genre?
It is not his genre.
God, I got excited.
However, no, he made the comment the other day. He was reading a book and he was like, I just really had a hard time believing in some of the characters. There was a guy who raised himself in the woods and now he's like special ops and super smart. He's like, I just really have a hard time believing his character.
That seems incredibly believable.
He was like, don't you agree? And I was like, I read books about witches and vampires.
Right? Like, hi.
Yeah.
A tree is freezing somebody.
I'm like
that
totally believable.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No,
Dude raised himself in the woods. Sure.
Seems like he did a damn good job at it too. Right? He seems successful. So good for you, dude.
Yeah.
Yeah,
But that's not his genre.
And I'll talk and, I'll say things like, I know you're never going to read this, so I'm just going to tell you what happened.
Right.
And I've done that. I'm like, look, I know you're not going to read this book, but I
true,
have to talk to somebody about it.
Yes.
So I will give you a brief synopsis, and then
Yes.
I will dive into the things that I have a problem with.
And I'm not spoiling anything because you're not going to read it.
Because you're never going to read it. But also, I have to say, appreciate that they're very receptive.
Yes.
And the fact that they're like, sure, go ahead and tell me. And then they
Yes.
will also, like, echo my feelings where I'm like, isn't that stupid? And they're like, yes, that does seem very stupid. I'm like, thank you. Have they read it?
Thank you for validating.
Do they have any idea of what I'm talking about? No.
Probably
But have
not.
they listened? I appreciate it.
Yes. Yes.
But that's why I like doing this, where we can talk about things that we've read and be like, okay, is that actually stupid, or am I just like...
Am I just
stupid?
stupid? Is it me?
Is it me? Am I the problem?
Is it me? I'm the problem.
It's me.
It's me. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't honestly think that I have, at this point right now, a fantasy that I don't like. So we've talked a little bit about different series, and I want to say Outlander to me is kind of a fantasy series because there's the time travel piece, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's not the witches, it's not the vampires, it's not blah, blah, blah. It's definitely the time travel for that one, which I think is like an earlier version of where we got in fantasy, yes. And so I would put that fantasy very light. I'd put it on a tinge of fantasy.
Yeah.
Right?
What is it about time travel?
That's fantasy? Or
No, that you dislike. Because you say that you...
It's not that I dislike it as much as the hopping of timelines doesn't follow in my linear brain very well.
Ah, okay.
And so I think it's a personal thing. The thing is, I loved the first however many books of Outlander, right? I loved them. I read them. And I think it was like book 6 maybe that I got to. And it had been so long since I read the other ones that I'm now struggling on book 8, right? I probably have to go back and read the entire series now because it's been so long. And I think... when a series, as much as I love reading things by that author, when that series keeps dragging on, and I have had a couple of times where I've been like, oh, this is the last book. I'm excited to see how it wraps up. We are still going.
Yes.
We're still going. That is what I can't stand.
Yeah, I think that's the series piece for me. And it's so funny because we were at the bookstore and I came across the first book, the blue one.
Yeah.
And I was like, ooh, Meg highly recommends these.
I do.
She
I love that
really
one.
likes. But I also remembered you saying the piece about it being so drug out. There were so many books. Like there was this. And I was like, I just don't know if I can sign on to this. So I actually didn't pick it up. But Greg did.
I was just saying,
He came over and he was like,
shelf.
weren't you talking about this? And I was like, yeah, Meg highly recommends it, but like it's a massive series, it's a massive world, like there's this whole piece. And he was like, that's a no-brainer then if it comes highly recommended. And I'm like, oh, but do you realize what you signed up for?
But for me, if we take this in a perspective of timelines, this has been over a decade of this series for me. Because she started writing it however long ago.
Yeah.
And so I've been reading it and waiting for these new books to come out for longer than my oldest child has been alive.
Okay.
Because I was reading what I thought was the last book before I was pregnant with Ryder. And so this has been probably 12, 15 years, right? Of me trying to get through this series that I haven't finished yet. So that's the conundrum.
Is it finished now?
I don't think so.
Oh,
I think
boy.
she's still writing. And like, that's the thing. But I haven't finished that last book that she has written yet. So it doesn't matter to me because I haven't finished yet.
That's true. And you're going to have to start over.
And I have to start over. So it maybe that will be the goal for next year. But I think that's a hard part with fantasy when Sarah J. Maas hasn't finished Crescent City. I hear there's more ACOTAR coming out. Like, the 5 books in ACOTAR can be their own thing. They can be done. It's cool, right? There is more space for more storyline, which is great, but it could be done. And so I'm okay with it being there. Whereas Outlander, I feel like there's still a couple pieces that are undone. And so I'm like, but what about? Don't leave me what abouting.
Yeah.
And also don't drag it out forever.
Right.
Because there are so many books to read.
Right.
There's so many books to read. So many things to do.
So many books out there. I think that's the thing. There are themes of things we're not enjoying.
Yes.
But this realm is so big that you really just...
There's always something to like.
Pick another one and move on.
Yeah.
Like, we're not going to dwell on
specific titles
that we didn't love. You just chalk it up to not my cup of tea.
Exactly.
And then you find something else in the other end of the fantasy pool.
Exactly. So I think it's worth recognizing the parts of fantasy that you like and don't like, and definitely staying into those realms unless you want to venture outside every now and then just to, get a little azimuth check in there.
Yeah.
Do I still not like this?
Do I?
Right? Do I still
check.
is this something I still don't want? Right? Because you can have dark fantasy, you can have cozy fantasy, you can have anything. And so I know the things that I like, I know the things that I don't like, and I know the gray areas that I'm willing to dive into. So,
and I know where my lane is that I enjoy, and I know what makes me feel good.
Right.
And I know that I can pick from that lane.
So tell us, what realms of the fantasy genre are not your favorite? What things are not doing it for you, and why? Would love to hear what that is, and if it's just part of, as we said, this fantasy wave. Are we all not liking the same things? Is that why we're all just seeing the same things over and over again? Or are there just so many different pockets?
And which pocket do you fit in?
Right.
And which pocket are you... Pick pocket.
Pick your pocket.
Pick your pocket.
Pick your pocket. Which pockets do you pick?
You could pick your friends. You could pick your nose.
No.
But you cannot pick your friend's nose.
Goodbye.
Bye.
It was great to have you join us for today's chat. If you'd like to continue the conversation, provide a recommendation, or simply say hi, pop over to Instagram at wine.read.wine. Also, if you're the review type person, we'd love for you to subscribe and leave us an honest review on your favorite podcast player. Or leave us a comment on our YouTube channel. We'll see you on the next episode. Happy reading!